Hello again, everyone. Edwin Lerner back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the disappearance of Gabrielle Petito. Now, some of you may have heard that she had disappeared in recent time. She has been, officially, as you could say, declared missing at this time and reported missing. The mother had apparently she had last seen her visibly. It was like through some Facebook chat on August 24th, around August 24th, and now she is she is missing at this point in time. And the thing is, there is a manhunt on now for her boyfriend, who at a time was considered or perceived as a person of interest. Now he is somebody that maybe is seen as a suspect. Um, the thing is, I'm going to talk about some natal placements and transits in her chart that may have been tied into this. Now, I have a birth date as March 19th, 1999. I had to improvise once again and do a solar/sunrise chart, in which I put the sun at the same spot as the ascendant. First thing I want to get at is that we're going to talk about some placements, natal placements, transits that might have been tied in to her disappearance. There's nothing official as whether she's dead or not. I'm sure there's speculation regarding that. Now, the thing I want to talk about first, some basic matters connected with their chart placements. Now, her sun is in Pisces, and it's not far from the critical anaretic 29th degree of Pisces, which is 29 degrees in astrology. Of course, many of you may know, is a crisis degree. It's a critical degree, and it's the full culmination of the sign. It's also conjunct the fixed star sheet, which, of course, the sun is about life. And the fixed star sheet is connected with tribulation, adversity, sometimes suicide, even it could be murder, it could be drowning in some cases, and it could be crisis related. It might be, remember, 29 degrees in astrology is also the full culmination, could represent the full culmination and expression of the sign. So it can get very powerful as far as her basic character goes, which is the sun, very powerful and intensify Pisces characteristics, which would include, on the positive side, being perhaps very idealistic, compassionate, forgiving, altruistic, but on the negative side, somewhat nebulous or unclear, easily deceived, possibly even gullible, and even a life that might have been maybe somewhat lacking some kind of direction, focus. And Pisces energy could be directionless and very chaotic. Now, the thing about this is too, and remember, interestingly enough, she has Mercury based on the solar sunrise time at 29 degrees, at that anaretic crisis degree, in the full culmination of the sign, but it is retrograde. She has Mercury in Pisces, of course, is in its detriment in fall. It's also being retrograde, and it's not. It's interesting because she was when the police, I believe it was the police, had talked to her, something about she was having difficulty in composing a sentence because she was so dominated by emotions. Remember, when Mercury is in a water sign, that emotions can very strongly cloud logical thinking, and even in the fact, again, it's in its detriment and fall. So I understand it being retrograde, it's a little bit harder to articulate at times, I would say, what she really wanted to say. And the fact that Jupiter conjuncts it could enlarge that as well. And the sun fairly close conjunction to her natal Mercury can shine the light on that, so to speak. She did state, it has been stated that she has suffered from some kind of mental or emotional issues or disorders. And she also stated it. There was one article I'd seen blog on the web that stated that she actually specifically said that there was some kind of obsessive or compulsive issues that she had been dealing with. Now, she also has a Mars in that eighth house. In the eighth house, Mars in Scorpio. The eighth house in astrology can be connected with psychological disorders. And she has Scorpio on the cusp of that eighth house in the solar/sunrise chart, which could indicate that those issues can be ones, they can be obsessive, compulsive psychological issues. And then the fact that the Mars is in that eighth house, Mars in Scorpio, she might have been feeling like she was having a perpetual battle dealing with that. And she also has Mars opposite. Well, Mars actually is making, I'd say, a loose opposition to the natal Saturn. So if there was any anger that she expressed, Mars in Scorpio can express anger connected with jealousy or vengeance, or maybe just lack of maybe control issues or power even in one's life. I would say it could be where when you have it opposing Saturn, it may be harder to take that responsibility or accountability for those actions. It could also be too, another way I think that opposition could manifest is that it might be more difficulty in expressing that anger more in a more constructive way. It might be where the anger might have been held back, can be held back way too long. On the positive side, Mars in Scorpio can it's in its dignity. It can be a position where one can accomplish maybe perhaps some things that might have seemed unattainable or insurmountable. But anyway, going back to, I want to talk more about her chart, natal placements and transits that might correlate with her disappearance, and possibly could be death is a possibility. Now, looking on the fourth house cusp of the end of life on the solar sunrise chart is at 29 degrees, a critical degree. Being in Gemini, it could be through something where it involved a short journey. Perhaps it might be something that's going to be in the news at some point. If she has passed on. I know people don't want to really consider that. You want to be hopeful and optimistic, but it has been a protracted and prolonged period since she has been last visibly seen. It's also something too where, Gemini energy can be mischievous as well. It might be through the result of somebody's mischievous actions, or somebody that was really two-faced. Maybe the boyfriend actually did something, had some involvement in this. Another thing, and I want to get to, and the ruler of that fourth house of the end of life in the solar sunrise chart falls in the first house. A theory I have is that when you have a placement like that, when you have the ruler of the fourth house or the eighth house, as an example, fourth house is connected with the end of life, the eighth house is associated with death, it falls in the first house. The first house in astrology does rule the early childhood, but I think in some cases it may manifest in an ending that might come earlier than you would think, than average, than what it should. Like having, for example, Pluto in the first house as an example in a natal chart, or Pluto conjunct the sun, where the life might end a little bit earlier in some cases than you think it would. And the thing is, another thing too, and when I look at the chart, she also has in the solar sunrise chart, Chiron is in the eighth house of death. And she also has Chiron conjunct Pluto. That could indicate Pluto is connected with death. Chiron can be not just about emotional suffering, but it can be about physical suffering as well. And this is something, and Pluto falls in the ninth house of global communications. It's in the sign Sagittarius, which is associated with that. So it wouldn't be surprising, at some point it might be revealed she has died, and it's something that's going to be in the global media. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway. And also, one of the rulers of the eighth house of death does fall in the eighth house, which could be an indicator of a death coming through murder, because the eighth house is associated with death, and it's also associated with murder as well. And as far as disappearances, Neptune in 12th house have an association with that. Now she has, interestingly enough, I know it's generational, but it doesn't mean it can't affect somebody. The sign can't, the sign that's in it, it's connected with the generational planet chart, can have some effect, personally on someone. Now, she does have Neptune in Aquarius. Again, Neptune is associated with disappearances. Aquarius is social media. Interestingly enough, that the last time she had been visibly seen was through a Facebook chat, which is, and of course, Facebook is connected with the internet and social media. Her Neptune falls in the 11th house in this chart of social media and the internet. And the thing in the 11th house is also connected with television. So it can be something that was going to be, maybe was meant to be televised, or at least figured more prominent in television, more so than in most disappearances of others. Now, Pluto is not, transit Pluto is not conjunct the natal Neptune based on the orbs that are allowed. But, it's like 7 degrees, or maybe around 7 degrees away, even 7 or 8 degrees away from the natal Neptune at this time. And I don't think we could definitively say that a planet by transit is not feeling any vibration, even if it's like 8 degrees away, by transit. And Pluto is connected again with death and murder. Neptune is associated with disappearances. Maybe there's a connection with this, and I want to be hopeful that this is not what has happened to her. And the thing is too, is that looking at this, it just, for me, it's just terrible what is transpired. Maybe the boyfriend is on the run, maybe because somebody wants to be really, let's say, idealistic, or be very optimistic, or try to see, the expression devil's advocate, look at the less, to try to find an example of a possibility that would be remote, but try to emphasize it anyway, even though it might be a minuscule possibility, is that the boyfriend could have taken off because he just was seen, he believed he was seen as a primary suspect, even if he didn't have anything to do with her disappearance. Now, I think that's very improbable and unlikely. I do believe he does have, not in all probability, he does have knowledge of her whereabouts at this point in time. And another thing I want to state too, she also, Gabrielle Petito has in her, as far as a transit in the solar sunrise chart, she has transit Neptune in the 12th house, which could indicate a very unclear or nebulous, even confounding disappearance. Of course, Neptune is associated with energy that's nebulous and unclear. And confounding, the 12th house is the house of disappearances. And transit Neptune is not far from her natal sun. And it's not, again, it's not, I know it's not conjunct by the transit or by the orb allowed in a transit, but it's still in fairly close proximity to her natal sun. And as I stated before, I don't think we could definitively say that just because a transit is not in its allowed orb, maximum orb, it doesn't mean a vibration isn't felt to that natal planet from it. So anyway, there's really not much more for me to say as far as this. I mean, her natal chart and transits that might have been tied in to her passing. So anyway, people, and I do hope. First, I just want to end this that prayers go out to her, and hopefully, prayerfully, she's found unscathed and unharmed. I don't believe that's the case, sadly, and I don't want to sound overly negative, morose, or morbid, but I just, it just doesn't look good. And if somebody's disappeared on August 24th, the time of this video is September 18th, 2021. We're talking about like 25 days disparity between the time of the disappearance and the present time, and the fact that she hasn't been visibly seen since the 24th, and the mother even stated that she was, I guess she was a little bit skeptical of the text messages that were coming in till like around August 30th, and then after that, there was nothing. There was no more text messages, whether they were coming from her or someone else, perhaps impersonating her. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Leonard saying stay well.